let's go for it. Good evening, all. Oh, we have our seventh commissioner. Welcome. Hey, good evening, everyone. Brendan Hogan here, calling to order the December meeting of the Public Works Commission at 6:33. Welcome all. Yeah, in the interest of time, we had a nice full agenda this evening, and appreciate the input from staff. I'll say in advance, we have material in the packet. Please just saying to give us an overview of the key points from your ends as we get to your various agenda items. The next item on the agenda is the agenda itself. Comments or suggestions regarding the agenda?
I have a motion to take the item A out of the consent agenda so that I can have some information from engineer, I'm spacing on her name, Malzahn.
Susan Malzahn, yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion to pull agenda item 4A, and seconded. Any other discussion around that motion or other points here? I'll say two things. We're missing, at my end, we're missing agenda item 9. And I think given the full schedule and the 3 things seeking a vote, we'll put the just informative item of what was listed as 4A towards the back. We'll bump up Marketplace Garage into the blank agenda slot 8 and call Queen City Park Road and Burton Hub proposal agenda item 9. Does that work on it for you all?
As long as that works for engineer Malzahn.
Okay, staff send.
I don't know if that'll work for her. I have communicated with her extensively today a little bit, so she knows sort of the kind of things I'm interested in having a discussion about. So that might be, she might be ready to sort of launch through it quickly.
Sure. I think that is
motion on the table. Your motion on the table to approve the agenda with the changes. Is that already there?
Yes. Commissioner Overby made a motion. Commissioner Archambault seconded.
Okay.
And I was suggesting that we take that item from the consent agenda, which is really just an informative item, and put it at the end of the rest of our action items here. That's friendly to the motioner. Sounds like it is.
Is that acceptable to engineer Malzahn?
Yes, we talked about that this evening. I think given that there are a number of action items on the agenda, let's work to get through those, and then we'll use the balance of the time to answer any questions.
Great, thanks.
Friendly to the seconder?
Yes.
All right, that will go to a vote. All those in favor of the modified agenda here, please say aye.
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 Aye for myself. Any opposed? All right, agenda passes. Moving forward, we are at public forum. Mr. Goulding, do we have any, see one hand raised perhaps?
Thanks, Chair Hogan. For members of the public who have joined us on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to speak during this public comment period. It looks like at least one member of the public has joined via the phone. If you would like to talk, please hit *9, and that will alert us that you're interested in talking. At this time, Kelly Devine is asking to speak, so I'll promote you over, Kelly, and you'll be able to speak at once.
Thanks, Rob. It's been a while since I've spoken before the commission. Just wanted to say that I've been in communication with Assistant Director Paget about the item coming forth about the 2-hour free parking proposal, and just in terms of the feedback that we've gotten from businesses in Burlington, I want to say that there's strong support for the idea of moving the start date forward. As I'm sure many of you know, our downtown businesses not only are really challenged in the midst of the pandemic, but we had both an uptick in cases and additional emergency orders further restricting people's ability to gather and discouraging people from being out in the community in mid-November. So it's hurt the holiday season. We still don't know how many of our businesses are going to remain open for the first quarter of the year. We're hearing a lot of them may go into hibernation. I know that Assistant Director Paget's aware of that. I expect it's going to continue to have impact on parking revenue. Just want to say that the Burlington Business Association is still working together closely with Jeff and the folks on the team over there to try to both problem solve the challenges facing our downtown and then the sort of the consequential challenges that are facing the parking system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Hogan, at this time, nobody else has their hand raised, but as a reminder for the public, if you hit raise your hand on Zoom or *9 on the phone, that will alert us that you do wish to speak. But at this time, nobody is looking to talk.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Golding. That will close out the public forum and move to the consent agenda. Our modified consent agenda here, we're seeking a vote on really item 4B, loading zone adjustment adjacent to 372 North Avenue.
I'll make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you for that motion, Commissioner Kimball.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bose. Thank you. Is there any discussion around that motion? All right, go to a vote. Go around the list here. Seeking a vote on the consent agenda, Commissioner Bose.
Nope. Nothing for me.
Okay, can we take it to a vote, please? And Commissioner Bose, can you get your vote on the consent agenda?
Oh, sorry. Approve.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Overby.
I support that.
All right. Commissioner O'Neill.
I support it, yes.
Commissioner Barr.
Aye.
Commissioner Archambault.
Aye.
Commissioner Gilman.
Aye.
Aye for myself. All right, consent agenda passes. Thank you. Moving forward. Next item, Shelburne Street Roundabout project update. Looking for a staff presentation on this.
We'll have City Engineer Baldwin and Senior Engineer Laura Wheelock and Public Works Engineer Olivia Darisse joining us for this item. Can't hear you, Laura.
It's because she's looking at the northern light, I think.
Yeah.
Right. How about now?
Gotcha now.
Okay.
Thank you.
When we were being promoted, I think you were introducing the item. So we're all kind of, are we on the roundabout
Yes.
presentation? Okay. Olivia has a presentation to share with you guys tonight, if the sharing screen is available. And I have very rambunctious kids, so if you hear children in the background, I will try to mute myself when I'm not presenting to avoid that distraction. So DPW wanted to bring forward to the commission kind of where we are with the Shelburne Street Roundabout. This presentation was actually put together by VTrans and used in a couple different places. So there's going to be a few slides that we kept in there for your information since it's uploaded to the agenda, but we may skip through rather quickly. So here tonight, myself, Laura Wheelock, Senior Public Works Engineer with DPW, on the project team for the Roundabout, Olivia Darisse, who's also helping to manage this project, and obviously with Norman Chapin supporting us in this effort. This is really a partnership with VTrans. VTrans is managing and designing the project with the city's support for various components and of the design. So go ahead, Olivia. So the first couple slides are some historic images of what the roundabout used to be, and this intersection of Shelburne Street, Ledge Road, Locust Street, and Willard. Couple other views, things that are interesting to note, the historic use of this area with gas stations, and we'll get to that implication a little bit later in this presentation. Go ahead. So the Rotary, as it was called, really came to the forefront of an area that needed attention because it's a high crash location in the state. It's one of the highest crash locations in the state. And it's been there and continues to be there year after year after year as VTrans continues to do their evaluation of high crash locations. So with that being noted, it was eligible for federal funding under their highway safety program. It's 100% funded from VTrans, which also means that it gives them a little bit more control over what's happening, and also provides some limitations because it is 100% federally funded. Go ahead. So this project came through our process starting 2008, 2009 timeframe with the CCRPC, doing concept studies of what the intersection could be, couldn't be, and how we wanted it configured. And ultimately, around that timeframe, I think it was concluding in 2012 or so, the single lane roundabout was the intersection choice that was selected throughout the various governing bodies of the city. And I apologize, you know, on Zoom, these are always hard to see. To orientate you, north is to your right, with South Willard Street going down to the bottom right, Shelburne Street, also known as St. Paul Street, going directly to your right, Locust Street going straight up the page, Christ the King's off there on the side, and then Shelburne Road, as people would generally refer to it, which heads out to South Burlington, down to the left, and then the little street going straight down the page is Ledge Road. So this is the proposed configuration of the single lane roundabout. Certainly a complicated area with all the various side streets and driveways, and our heavy bike ped use, but this gives you kind of a general idea as to how various aspects of the project are going to be managed. The Century 21 property, let me get back over there. We're modifying the in and out of the driveway to better create structure for the roundabout. Currently, they have an opening that kind of goes straight out into the existing rotary. The driveway for the Majestic car rental becomes an exit only into the roundabout, but it is preserved so they have in and out flow and high function of their parking lot. And then I think, you know, just importantly that the channelization and that the movements that are technically being restricted by Appendix C ordinances really will become enforced, which will help to improve the safety of the roundabout. The last thing that I want to point out when it comes to the geometric changes that are happening on the roadway is that as you enter this from the south, so you're heading up Shelburne Road, heading into town, you know, this is going to be one of your first gateways. Shelburne Road will narrow down into being a single lane as it enters the roundabout. So there's a merge right in the vicinity of Adams Court to become single lane. The entire facility has on and off ramps for bike facilities. If there's a biker that is using this corridor that doesn't feel comfortable proceeding through the roundabout as a cyclist, we do have kind of these on and off ramps onto the pedestrian facilities to be a separated bike facility to be able to facilitate those movements. Olivia, when you're ready. So kind of the big pros as to why the roundabout was the best fit here. The current vehicles per day today and into the future really work best with a single lane roundabout. The one hesitation that occurred during the design is that depending on if Burlington stayed vehicle centric, it could be conceived in the distant future that a lane, a hybrid is what they would call it, is a slip lane that would have gone from Shelburne Road up to Willard. The current geometry is set so that the city has the ability to create that addition onto the roundabout in the future if necessary. But I think that the really good news is that as we've been watching the vehicles per day through this intersection, and even before COVID, they're actually going down. You know, our trips are turning into bikes and peds. So that's a positive trend, gives this intersection configuration even more success. The roundabout, oh, sorry. Well, a couple more highlights on this page is the crash reductions that are anticipated by providing more structure to this intersection, the shortened crosswalks that the roundabout can provide, and the splitter islands and the safety opportunities there. And one of the hidden but will be certainly felt impacts during construction is kind of the reconfiguration of all the utilities, adding in dedicated stormwater, replacement of water lines, improvements to sewer lines. Water, sewer, and electric are all city utilities, and all of those costs are being covered through the project. Okay. So these are a couple ones that I'm just going to loosely skip over when V-Trans was giving the presentation about some of the challenges that are going to be encountered through the project that really have no bearing on transportation. Do want to talk a little bit about the stormwater though. So the project is going to take a significant portion of the project area off of our combined sewer system and move the water into dedicated stormwater. They're also going to add detention tanks with sand filters to be able to help pre-treat the water that is going into our dedicated stormwater. And it's going to be a huge benefit for this area and the integrated plan. As I gave a little bit of a preview, the numerous gas stations that existed in this area certainly have some leftover remaining effects that are going to need to be mitigated. We're still in the process of working through V-Trans with those, getting soil reports. Preliminary testing was done this summer, but certainly a challenge that's going to lead to time that's going to need to be used to manage this during construction. So one of the things that's also been done to help prepare for the project, a few summers ago, we dug over 100 holes in the right of way to locate all of the existing utilities. As we started drawing on the network of existing utilities that occur in this area, it became clear that we needed some specific information. And going out and gathering this information at that time to figure out exact locations and exact depths where utilities crossed each other is going to help us significantly when it comes to construction. So it's no longer a guesswork, it's a view inside of the earth to be better prepared when we start digging. So to give an idea of what this looks like, there's 37,000 linear feet of existing utilities within the project area. That's 7 miles inside of this one area. A solid list on the slide there of all the different utilities that are there that are going to have to be rearranged to be able to fit in the dedicated stormwater. That is probably the leading driver of most of this relocation. The existing assets are also not new. The water line is so delicate, it won't survive construction. It's going to be one of the first things that gets upgraded. We took time this summer to reline the sewer lines that are going to remain so that they can survive construction. And then there's still a few sewers that are going to get replaced and relocated as part of this work effort. So the next slide, I think, shows some of the other electric and communication utilities. And yeah, just the map of all the existing stuff that's out there. So I'm going to give it over to Olivia to walk you guys through our transportation traffic management plans during construction.
Yep. Thanks, Laura. So yeah, transportation management and traffic control is something that we in VTrans have taken very seriously throughout this process, especially as we move forward, get closer to construction. Obviously, these questions are coming up a lot. People are concerned about how they're going to get to work, how they're going to navigate as a pedestrian or a cyclist. So VTrans and one of their consultants, Stantec, have developed a very comprehensive and robust traffic control plan to accompany the project plans. And I'll give you kind of like a little preview of what those look like, but we're not only focusing on moving vehicles through the work zone safely, but we're really focusing on moving pedestrians and cyclists through the work zone safely. So everything's considered. This page shows an example of what these phasing and sequencing plans look like, provide a layout and provide some guidance as to what this phase of the work itself looks like, as well as some of the strategies that will be implemented to move traffic around and maintain flow through the work zone, as well as an estimated duration for each phase. So there are several phases with each with accompanying narratives that are really, really informative and valuable. So we'll take a look at what those look like as well in a little bit. So as far as what was done to prepare these sequencing plans, VTrans and their consultant and analyzed how each sequence would affect existing traffic operations, not only in the immediate vicinity of the work zone, but also streets that will be used as detours, streets that are close by, how it kind of like affects the big picture in this area, assessing construction risk factors and how to mitigate those risks. We're recommending mitigation measures for traffic mobility. So some of the strategies utilized, you'll see, are your typical lane shifts. Lane shifts will move traffic around the work zones, but in most cases maintain two-way traffic, which is, certainly the goal for peak hours. Implementing left turn restrictions. This will be important for reducing conflicts within the work zone. It'll make for a much safer work zone. Will maintain flow through the work zone better, reduce delays, especially in situations where we where we are still trying to maintain two-way traffic. For pedestrians and cyclists, implementations such as temporary ramps and crosswalks, for example, near Adams Court to allow for pedestrian egress from east to west across the project, since closer to the rotary won't be accessible during much of the project. So there's been a lot of special considerations for very specific situations that require a little more attention. Mobility recommendations, again, the goal here is to maintain two-way traffic during peak hours, which it's a pretty big window, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Shelburne Street, south of the Roundabout, and then north of the Roundabout, maintaining one-way traffic with detours to kind of, you know, keep traffic flowing, keep the mobility there. Use of uniform traffic officers and flaggers. We have seen uniform traffic officers do a really good job of slowing traffic down through the work zone, especially if they have their blue lights. But you know, this personnel will be here to help you know, guide traffic and maintain traffic, slow traffic down through the work zone. We've been coordinating closely with property owners and will continue to do so on roads where one-way alternating traffic, detours, or road closures will be implemented. Underground utility work will often utilize one-way alternating traffic. That will be mostly performed on off-peak hours and or weekends. So really trying to minimize the disruptions for those major operations. Another example of accommodating pedestrians will be you know, temporary sidewalk on the east side of Shelburne Street after underground utilities are installed, reestablishing that north-south pedestrian route. So kind of with each phase, you know, we'll be constantly you know, reestablishing these pedestrian routes as things are torn up when they need to be replaced, and then replaced immediately as soon as feasible. Whoops, sorry. We've also been closely coordinating with the Champlain Parkway project. So as most of you are aware, that's coming up. So we have been in close coordination with them to ensure that, you know, none of our traffic control packages are in conflict with their plans, and that we're kind of, you know, all working in harmony. There's, you know, a good chance that some operations will overlap throughout the course of both of these projects. So definitely, you know, working closely with that team. Public outreach, VTrans has hired a public information consultant to assist with outreach and project alerts. It just so happens that this is the same consultant being used for the Champlain Parkway, so that's really handy. So this consultant is like fully familiar with both of those projects and how to kind of communicate, you know, communicate to the community as a whole between these two projects. Using platforms such as Front Porch Forum, social media, VT Alert, where anybody who signed up can receive text messages alerting them of traffic disruptions for that day, as well as developing an email distribution list. Pretty much we've started developing this list with this public outreach consultant. As of right now, it, you know, includes residents and businesses and pretty much people who have been reaching out with an interest in the project. We, you know, always, you know, add them to the list, and there will be more to come on that in the future. But that's another way that will be used to reach out to folks to keep them informed. So as I kind of going back to the traffic control plan, as I mentioned, there are these narratives that kind of accompany the traffic management plans. And these are really great because they're very thorough in giving a description of what work is occurring, when it's occurring, how long it's going to take, how it's going to impact the traffic operations. And then they give some really great rationale about why, you know, some of the strategies and mitigation strategies are being recommended, what the risks associated with each plan entail, and how to mitigate some of those risks. So it's really great narratives, again, accompanying the plans that I showed in slide 16. This is kind of just, again, another close-up of that text that on the layouts that will describe each phase and each kind of strategy and plan moving through construction. So future regulations, DPW wanted to make the commission aware of, and these don't need any action at this time. It's just we wanted to put these in front of you right now. So as we get closer to, as the project draws closer to completion, these will things that are going to be things that need to be taken care of. But parking regulations, no parking zones that will be implemented on the legs of the roundabout, each of the approaches. And we obviously don't want folks parking on the center median of the roundabout. I can kind of zoom in on the next slide, but the roundabout itself will have a truck apron in the middle that will be a kind of a mountable apron, of course, for to accommodate larger trucks going through the roundabout. And what we want to avoid is people thinking that that's a parking area. So the exact signage and sign placement is still to be determined, but you can expect to see something for that. Regulatory signs, yield signs will be implemented on each leg of the roundabout approach, both in locations where existing stop signs exist and where stop signs don't exist yet, obviously, such as on the legs of the actually Shelburne Road and St. Paul Street. The speed limit will need, the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit zone will need to be extended to begin at Adams Court. Currently, it starts at Ledge Road, so and it's 35 miles per hour until Ledge Road. So we will be looking to reduce that. That's approximately the location at which the lanes merge into one. And then crosswalks and rectangular rapid flashing beacons will be implemented on all the legs of the roundabout as well. We've seen great success with these in their current locations. They've really made a difference, made the roundabout or the existing rotary a lot safer for crossing pedestrians, especially with the school being right there. And we look forward to having these on each leg. So this is just kind of a visual again of what to expect. This is the kind of truck apron that I was describing, where we want to avoid people parking. Each of the legs, most of these side streets have on-street parking, so we want to make sure that our no parking zones extend to the appropriate locations. Especially here on South Willard Street, there's quite a bit of on-street parking right here. Again, existing crosswalks and RFBs exist here currently, but you'll see them here as well. And then, yeah, again, extending the 25-mile-per-hour zone back to Adams Court. Also changing the stop signs, such as on Locust Street and Ledge Road, to yield signs, and adding in yield signs on these legs as well. So lastly, just a quick overview of the schedule. V-Trans is looking to have the final plans completed by the end of January, submitted to contract admin, reviewed, and then put out to bid near the end of February. That means they'll be reviewing bids in March and likely be awarding bids in April. So we're looking to hopefully break ground starting May 2021. The budget, as Laura mentioned, this is a 100% federally funded project. And as of right now, that the price tag on this project is about $7 million. So that's about it. I suppose I'll stop sharing now and open it up for questions.
I have just a couple quick things to add. I think that there may be a truck route during construction that we need temporary approval for a couple of the phases that we'll have to bring back to you. We need to wait to get the contractor on board to see if they are really going to run their construction phasing like we've um, planned it out for feasibility. The other things, as Olivia mentioned, for the distribution list, if you find that people are reaching out to you guys looking to be on this list, it is active right now, and we can start adding people about Roundabout communications. We do a quarterly update. There's a number of counselors that are on it that have been on it throughout the design phases, but we're certainly happy to add anyone who's interested in getting quarterly updates or any of the construction updates that are going out. And then last, we are still planning neighborhood meetings ahead of construction, closer to the start of construction, so it's more relevant. But definitely a few of those meetings to be able to get the information out to everyone. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. We're back for commissioner discussion at this point. Reminder, we're not in need of a vote here, but I do, on my behalf, and I think on behalf of the commission, thank you for the early preview of the work in general and ordinance changes that were required along the way. Let's go around the virtual room here. Commissioner Bose.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that detailed presentation. As somebody who walks, bikes, and drives using that intersection pretty regularly, it's exciting to see. I had two specific questions. In your slides, I can't remember what it was titled, some of the challenges. I mean, looking at the utility service that passes underneath the intersection. I mean, I was kind of, yeah, it seemed like a daunting task indeed. So I was wondering, I know you talked a little bit about the scoping that's been done already to map out some of those. So I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about how you're approaching, I mean, not in great detail, but some of the perhaps interaction you have with some of the utilities, the services that you have to coordinate with, how early do you give that kind of notice, or how early do you engage with them? And the second one was a very specific question around the roundabout and I think it's the Majestic, or whatever, I think it's the driveway that still will have access on and off. I mean, I guess I wondered a little bit about that. I see that they need the access, but I still wondered, that's already a point of entry into that intersection that I think is challenging. And I guess I still didn't really see how that would be resolved in terms of where that driveway opens out onto the roundabout. So if you could just talk a little bit about those two. Thank you.
Yep, certainly. So for your first question, the utility engagement, B-Trans started on the utility design in 2016, which is right around the time that I actually started managing the project. They had meetings with all of the utilities, including our own water, sewer, and electric, and have been actively meeting with them at kind of every major milestone. After the potholing was done, to figure out exact locations, they've sent them relocation plans for where they'll be, asked them inside of the duck banks that are being planned, how many spaces do they need, how many future spaces do they need, can they be paired with other utilities. So really a lot of diligence has been done to try to mitigate what we know are typical risks. I think, just having recently come off St. Paul Street's construction, we're going to dig in the ground and start figuring out that, the best laid engineered plans just somehow don't quite work with a vault, with a setup, with a rock, with whatever we find. And you kind of have to pivot and work with that. But by far, we've taken the collective of, the 4 engineers on the call for DPW and a ton of them from V-Trans to try to do the best we can, because this location can't go down, as kind of Waterbury's or the Berries or of the V-Trans world. So to move on to the next question, the Majestic car rental. The original design, when I started taking this project over, didn't include an exit for that property. V-Trans was holding to a purist design, and just before we entered the right-of-way phase, that V-Trans would deem it, which is generally, land taking, construction easements, feasibility, space that's needed to feasibly construct the design. The review found that the project or the parcel would not be viable without that driveway, that you wouldn't be able to have the number of parking spaces that are necessary by our zoning to serve that parcel. And so V-Trans would have had to purchase the entire parcel at minimum to be able to have that work without that driveway. They did review it. It will work. It works with the flow. It's a little bit more awkward if and when we ever went to a hybrid situation for that roundabout by adding a lane. I think there's a big concern when it comes to that parcel because the driveway would have to go away. So for now, it works, it functions. It helps keep a business hopefully in business in Burlington for the time being.
I will add
Thank you.
too, it's a one-way, it is a one-way driveway, so it's out only, I
Right.
believe. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's configured and pointed to the north so that it will only flow with the circulation as an exit only.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Overby.
I have a couple quick questions. One is sort of generally, where does Shelburne Road as a name end and Shelburne Street start? Is that just at the border of Burlington and South Burlington?
Which is actually down by Spear Street, yes.
Okay, so I mean, I've seen that in other contexts of this other thing we're talking about. Okay, so thank you very much.
Yep.
The second thing is, are we entitled to actually bring the approach speed limit down to 15 miles an hour instead of 25? Because I think based on, my favoritism for roundabouts, but one of the factors that actually makes a roundabout like this safer has to do with the reduction in the speed for pedestrians and bicyclists and anybody like that. So I don't feel that it's very safe to have people approaching us this roundabout at 25 miles an hour, trying to get through it at 25, particularly with that driveway situation. But honestly, what would we have to do to get the permission to be able to actually approve, instead of dropping it to 25 at Adams? I think Burley said we needed to down to 15 as an approach to that roundabout.
So I'm going to ask Norm to follow up on this one. My understanding is that legally, there's only certain locations and certain designations that you can even legally permit or enforce a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and that anything below that is not enforceable. You could use an advisory 15 mile an hour, but I would welcome Norm to follow up with this one.
Sure. So what you may not know the history of this, but when we went from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour in the city, we were challenged by the Traffic Transportation Board about our method of study and decision making. Because traditionally the view is that you need to rely on the prevailing condition to set and establish speed limits. But we made the argument then that we could lower the limit to 25 by discussing the intended uses and the potential of saving lives by reducing the limits to 25 miles an hour. We know that reducing limits to 25 miles an hour exponentially improves the possibility of surviving a pedestrian being hit by a car. So that's the reason why we went from really 30 to 25. There are some exceptions because of the geometry of the road and it becoming a speed trap. So we certainly didn't want that, and we had many conversations with the police. There is a threshold that the state is established that they will not allow any community to lower the speed limit below 25 miles an hour. With one exception. That is, there was a downtown bill that allowed in the downtown core 20 miles an hour, but we found that it was nearly impossible to enforce in discussions with the police. So therefore, we didn't reduce the speed limit to downtown to 20 miles an hour, but we have worked to constrain people's speeds by geometric design. So there's always the possibility of geometric design constraining people's behavior beyond the regulatory role. So that's what we do. We try to have the geometries drive the behavior.
Well, I think that's great. And I think that this will actually do that. But I absolutely think that it is critical that the speed at that roundabout is 15 coming into that roundabout for the pedestrians trying to get around there in the school. So whatever we do, I'm really happy to see us going down this path because we really need to do it. But I don't know what I need to do, if it's something I have to start working with the state legislature to do. But it really is not, one of the major strengths of a roundabout is the fact that you have a slow enough speed that the vehicles are looking for pedestrians at separately from trying to negotiate the roundabout and other vehicles. And at 25 miles an hour, you're going to have another experience like the Winooski rotary, which is not a roundabout. And so that's my concern. And I'm just expressing it now. And you've answered the question that right now we supposedly are not legally allowed to do it. So that's your answer right now. And it sounds like other work has to be done to get us authority to do that.
I would just add that if Laura pointed out that we're reducing from 2 lanes to 1 lane as it approaches. And there is, I think, in the longer view, I think we want to look at how we view what operationally needs are on Shelburne Road and whether or not the 4-lane configuration is the appropriate configuration for our wants and needs in the future. So that is a longer view, but I think when you come to an approach with that kind of volume of traffic and you're reducing from 2 lanes to 1, you're going to see a significant reduction in speed just for people to accommodate those types of movements together and merge. So I think you'll see some significant reduction in speed. There has been some concern that outside of the modeling, how will people's behaviors change, and how will this intersection be able to function in service that volume of traffic, and is it going to create standing queues from the south heading north? And this is why there's been some conversation back and forth about the provisioning of a hybrid space. So we will not know how people receive this until it's opened and it's settled in. And I think over time, people's behavior will settle in and they'll start to not have probably the standing queues that we would anticipate at the beginning.
That's true. We will find out. But I will do my own independent research on how we could potentially do it in a safer way, and hope we don't have any issues before that. So congratulations on actually getting ready to do this. It's excellent. The one question I did have about the presentation is the budget item that was $1 million of added reimbursable relocations added to the budget. What is that?
That's the third-party utilities. So communication companies that are not a city utility have to pay their own way through the project. So that's not a city expense. Correct. Yeah, that's that line items there for communications utilities relocations. Yeah. Right. There are still a few non-participating items that the city will need to fund, like our center sculpture, some participation in the contaminated soils, but it's not $1 million. It's not close to that.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Archambault.
Thank you. I'll make mine brief. Sometimes in these presentations, there's always that one picture that says 1,000 words. And I think this presentation was one of those, with that one. It's an overhead. It's kind of a blueprint, but it shows all the utilities running underneath that section. I just thought, my first thought when I saw it on the agenda is, we're talking about the Rotary again, right? It's been over the entirety of my years to see that. But that one picture kind of explains why. And so I'm really thankful for you offering and putting that in there to show us the complexities of that. I know we've talked about it a little bit in the past, but again, kudos to you. That one picture really highlights why it's taking so long. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Neill.
Great. Yeah, thanks. I looked at that slide and I thought like neurosurgeons, brain surgeons have that level of detail. So yes, grateful for that. A couple points to tag on to Commissioner Bowes and Commissioner Overy's comments. I wonder if it's possible for the Majestic car park like to pull out. Is that pull out is going to be before the crosswalk, correct? That will, so if you were crossing east, right, on Willard Street, and then you're walking along the sidewalk, I'm a vehicle pulling out of the Majestic, and I'm looking, okay, this happens all the time, I'm looking for the cars coming on the rotary so I can get out, and then pegging a kid who's going home or whatever. So I just wonder, you know, that conflict area, is there a way to request Majestic to put a stop sign or something that the vehicles stop before they go over the sidewalk? I don't know if that's possible, but that's one concern I have. And then I think more broadly about this rotary, which really does look great. This is a school zone, right? There's that Mater Christi school, the Catholic school there, what is Christ the King. There's an enormous field that the city is responsible for at Callahan. There are tons of kids who use that intersection. And so this will be safer. But I think if we keep in our minds that this is a school zone and the traffic calming, Engineer Baldwin, that you had mentioned, the geometric designs, but thinking about that traffic calming, certainly as it's coming, heading north on Shelburne Street, to really slow it down so that we are trying to protect our most vulnerable. Those are just my comments that I hope we can move forward with or keep in, not in the back of our mind, keep at the fore. That's all.
Yep.
Add a little something just to your last comment, and maybe it's not quite what you have in mind, but to bring you, Commissioner Overby, some comfort. It's a reminder about the RFBs that will be in place. So pedestrians will be able to actuate the the flashing beacons to cross the road, which will, you know, theoretically give you know, alert motorists that pedestrians are there. So maybe not quite what you're looking for, but just a reminder that those will be in place as well.
And those will be at all the crossing areas. So I saw one on the south side of the rotary.
Right, so in the completed design, there's actually a new crossing that'll be on the south side of the intersection. All legs of the crosswalks are will have RFBs available for those who feel that they, you know, want the extra comfort of the alert.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Barr, any comments on your end?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for a wonderful presentation. This is one of the more comprehensive ones that I've seen for this area. And I don't think you necessarily need to put it up on the screen, but my only comment has to do with the approaches to this roundabout, where it was depicted in red, these triangles and little segments of things along the way. Is that just going to be paint on the ground, or is that actually going to be structured? Because I've seen some roundabouts, and I'll use Jeffersonville as a perfect example. They've got a lot of nice cobblestone that has a lot of tread marks on it because cars tend to just go right across it. And especially with the crosswalks there, I imagine there might end up being some, and maybe not, maybe I missed it in the drawing, but some crosswalk islands, if you will, where pedestrians only get halfway across, and then it feels like Frogger, you know, you're in the middle of traffic. So that's,
yeah.
That's the question.
Happy to provide a little bit more detail on that. So all of those median areas, the islands, and even the center truck apron are all a vertical displacement off the roadway. They are proposed to being colored, stamped concrete for the truck apron area in the center. So similar to Jeffersonville, you'll see that raised textured pattern, but it'll be a colored concrete. So it'll probably still show marks. But all the other areas are, as you approach in, are full height curbs. There are at-grade pedestrian recess areas or refuge areas. The RFBs are being timed for the entire crosswalk and not just for the refuge Frogger concept.
Okay, good. That's good.
Sorry.
And it also contributes towards the traffic calming, if you will, because once you get to that checkpoint or choke point, even if we don't get the 15 miles per hour that Solvig was, Commissioner Overview was requesting or talking about, it's like cows going into a chute, getting ready to get into the barn. You got to go slower because there's less of an area to go through. So, Sorry, Olivia. Go ahead.
No, sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to add, and I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but the colors shown on the drawings are probably not accurate. It's probably not going to be red. Those raised areas probably be more of a neutral color. So just don't want to get anybody's expectations wrong.
Sure, thank you. All right, Commissioner Gilman.
Nothing else for
Look, on my end, some of the things I was curious about the packet were a little more detail on the scheduling. I'll just point out as the city's project website has a dedicated page for this Shelburne Street Roundabout, which also links out to the VTrans project website for the same project. If anyone is looking for the detailed one-pagers for each of phases 1 through 12, I believe, and the rough timing by year of when various phases are targeted. I guess a workflow or communication workflow question: when do we get more dates on this? Like, suppose this goes out for bid in the spring and it gets awarded May or whenever. Like, I mean, when would you expect dates on construction phase?
So we do have some of those loose dates. VTrans is looking to let this out for bid February 10th. They're very structured with their organization. They have a pretty good shot at making that date. If they miss it, it's maybe by a month or so. With that being said, the contract would get awarded April timeframe. VTrans has a pretty robust pre-construction submittal package requirement. So the actual tentative construction should be after school lets out. In this pandemic year. What that looks like, it may be significant, it may not be a significant thing to have achieved, but it should be sometime in June that work would start.
Great, thank you. A couple of terminology questions, Francis. Could you comment, what's a SMAC and what is a sleeving the existing sewer?
SMAC, you'll have to let me know where you found that one, because again, this presentation did come from VTrans.
Okay.
But sleeving the sewer is relining the sewer. So it's, and it already happened. We do it within the existing manholes and we run a fiberglass sleeve through and expand it out and basically create a new pipe inside the existing one.
Thank you for that translation. Yeah, it's okay. I guess that's all on my end. Thank you. Are there any interested public commenters on this item?
Chair Hogan, there's no one signed up at this time, but if anybody does want to speak, please raise your hand on Zoom or star 9.
You were, I don't know if it's just me, you sound a little muted there, Mr. Golding.
All right, sorry about that. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, there is nobody signed up at this time. If any members of the public do wish to speak, please hit star 9 on the phone or raise your hand on Zoom.
Thank you for that.
At this time, there does not appear to be anybody looking to speak.
All right, great. I will, no action needed. I'll close out item 5 here. Thank you very much. Libby and Laura,
Thank
appreciate
you
the
all.
presentation. Moving forward, University Place Conceptual Designs. Welcome back, Laura.
Yep, it was a long trip back and forth. So also here tonight to bring back to you guys for consideration the University Place conceptual designs. Philip has a much shortened presentation to kind of go through, where we concluded after coming out of the October meeting with you guys, and what we're looking to move forward with. So Philip, would you like to?
Yes, I do. I will try and keep things brief. So as we discussed last month, good evening, everybody, by the way, the Department of Public Works, in partnership with the University of Vermont, we've been working with consultants on developing conceptual plans for University Place. University Place is a priority project for the historic and iconic nature of the buildings involved, its visual prominence and location at the heart of campus. University Place is also identified in UVM's active transportation plan. UVM moves and is a signature project recommendation. Both UVM and the city are interested in improving safety on the streets. And this presentation kind of marks the beginning of the end of phase 1, hopefully, which is concept designs. So the first phase has included 2 concept designs for University Place. Whoops, hang on. Not quite done yet. Conceptual designs will be in accordance with standards adopted by the City of Burlington, as well as planning documents adopted by both UVM and the City of Burlington. This phase started in March of this year and might finish this month. We'll see, hopefully, or we might extend into next year. Not quite sure yet, but let's talk about the 2 concepts. Here's University Place. For orientation, north is actually heading to the left. I know we're used to north being straight up on drawings, but Colchester Avenue is on the left and Main Street to the south is on the right. For the basic concept, we're trying to limit the work to be within the existing curb line. The basic does attempt to meet some of the key design criteria. For both concepts, we are proposing to eliminate 1 lane of vehicular traffic, and University Place would be a 1-way going north from Main Street to Colchester Avenue. The traffic study in 2017 confirms that there's more flow going north. This transformation to 1-way flow frees up space for bike lanes for most of the roadway. We are trying to improve pedestrian safety. So in accordance to standards with this basic concept, we need to consolidate some of the crosswalks, which is a little bit of a drawback with the basic concept, which means we would go from 9 crosswalks to 6, which is a little bit of a bone of contention between the university and city staff. Some of the crosswalks need to be moved because they're going into driveways, or they're right next to each other, or they go into a stairway, a historical stairway, and this does not meet accessibility or ADA Title I needs, and we need to make sure our crosswalks meet these needs. The crosswalk consolidation, this is an issue for the basic concept, as there are several paths on the green, as you can see, which lead to sort of logical crosswalk points, and the removal of these crosswalks should kind of coincide with adjusting these paths. And this is, like I say, this is where the basic concept is limited in what we can do. To make University Place more bike and pedestrian friendly, we're proposing the removal of majority of parking. In this scheme, we show the removal of all the on-street parking with the exception of food trucks on the south end of the street. So we kind of zoom in on the south end of the street where the food truck area is. Like I said, you can kind of see where that drawback is with the crosswalk. I don't know, can you see my mouse? I don't know if you can or not. Yes, you can. Awesome. So we can see there's a pathway that comes up right here, and this is where a crosswalk, maybe a student or a pedestrian would think, oh, I can cross there, but will be food trucks there and a crosswalk would not make sense. So that's kind of a drawback with the basic design. Also, you can see that the bike lane kind of has a break. Oh wait, somebody have a question or something? Somebody piped in. Okay, just keep going. All right. So again, we're working within the existing curb lines. There is some possibilities of, notching in the food truck area for the basic design. But this is, these are the concepts. These are not finished designs. So that's the basic design, basic concept. Here's the enhanced. So in the enhanced design, we're addressing the same issues and objectives. In this version, we have more flexibility to move and adjust the curb line, as well as the sidewalk and paths on both sides of the street. This provides us with some interesting opportunities and improvements, which take things a little bit further. You can see a dash line on either side of the road, and this dash line represents the curb line as it exists right now. So you can see that we're proposing to narrow the roadway from about 30 feet to 22 feet. So we will be increasing the overall green space. For the enhanced, we are looking to widen the existing sidewalk on the east side. Based on the wear and tear on the grass adjacent to the existing sidewalk, the current sidewalk is not wide enough to accommodate pedestrian traffic needs at this particular time. For the enhanced concept, we deal with the crosswalk consolidation in a little bit of a unique and more logical way, with a crossing plaza in the middle of University Place. The crossing plaza enhances the sense of place and historical context at the heart of campus with the University Green. Additionally, we would be constructing a sidewalk on the west side that directs pedestrians to where we want them to go, which is a marked crosswalk. So if we look at that south side again, now we have the food trucks notched into the curb. So we have a continuous bike lane, which is something we could do with the basic design. And you also can see we remove the path that kind of goes to nowhere, which points the pedestrians where we want them to go. Looking at the north end, we don't show it here, but we could show some potential drop-off parking, which is something that we feel like is necessary. Again, these are just concepts. They're not finished designs. We do feel like that would be a necessity to notch in some temporary drop-off parking for events and whatnot. You can also see that we are removing the left turn from Colchester Avenue onto University Place, which eliminates a turning conflict, which we found caused some accidents at this intersection. This is also based on the 2017 traffic study. So based on our overall analysis and feedback we've received, the enhanced concept is our recommended preferred alternative. The Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee has supported our recommendation for the enhanced concept at their meeting last month. So we are seeking a motion tonight from the commission to approve the enhanced concept as the preferred alternative. What does that mean for the commission? It means, well, that you support the concept, but there are some probable commission approvals moving forward, which will pretty much be the same either way, the basic concept or the enhanced. The one-way street designation, University Place in a northerly direction, no parking areas. So on the east side of University Place, with the exception of a vehicle loading zone in front of Ira Allen Chapel and the food truck parking in front of the Royal Tyler Theater, and the vehicle loading zone itself, and then new regulations around the use of the food truck spaces, which are currently not regulated in traffic regulations at this particular time. So, and we can discuss that and come up with the criteria that we want in the future. I kind of laid some of that out in the memo that was sent to all of you with the agenda. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Laura, and she's going to talk about the budget.
So coming out of the October meeting, we heard the strong message that, the basic concept doesn't, either of the two don't really feel like a lose, or, there's no real loser of the two, because they're both such dramatic transformational changes that are available on the street to reorientate the use to being, and accommodate the heavy bike ped users that we found during our outreach. We did take the opportunity to pare down the enhanced to really come back with a really good, not quite great fit and finish of the street. So the plaza has materials now that are more concrete and asphalt, maybe colored, whatnot, not any sort of other elaborate landscaping type features to really help make this affordable for both partners within this agreement, and to fit both in closer to the original budget. So where we landed with the design that you just saw, our design, construction, inspection costs with contingency really comfortably and conservatively hit the $1.357 million mark. Within the current agreement, there's a cap on the city's funding that goes into the project. Shown below is kind of the resulting UVM and contingency that would need to come out from UVM. So all of that being said, Philip, is there any other slides, or is that the end?
I have a timeline just so that we can kind of
Yep.
sum up where
Yep.
things are, where we've been. So as I already discussed, the two approved, the enhanced concept is a preferred concept. We did present this to the city council on Monday, so that they are situationally aware, and they had some questions, and now we're presenting it to the commission tonight so that we can get your approval of what of our recommendations, and then we're going to bring this to Board of Finance and City Council later this month. There will be some UVM boards and committees involvements, and then we're going with phase 2, and the earliest anticipated construction would be 2022.
Yep. So the if you can go back just a second.
Sure.
The presentation that we gave to the city council on Monday of this week was a little bit of a revised version from what we were anticipating we would be presenting. Conversations with the university and the city throughout the week really have us still thinking about what the enhanced concept does look like. And there's still some challenges around the dates that have been set by administration who crafted the agreement, now down to the staff who have to facilitate the work. So next Monday, we're actually going to the Board of Finance and the City Council to ask for an extension of time to be able to revisit the agreement overall that we have around the dates that are inside of University Place and what that means for the roles and responsibilities. They still do support the enhanced concept. We also, both parties want to see a memorandum of understanding about the Pearl Prospect Colchester Ave intersection, as that intersection does play a supporting role in this proposed project, with the traffic coming that would have gone southbound on University Place now proceeding through that intersection. And so both parties are looking to kind of get a better memorandum of understanding about how that intersection plays into this project. So we're seeking more time from the council on this, mostly because of the really creative wording that we are living within, so that we don't end up with a penalty payment. Both parties are supportive of an extension. We just need a little bit more time. So with that, Philip, thank you.
So that's it. We'd be seeking a motion from the commission this evening to support the staff recommendation that the preferred alternative for the concept is the enhanced concept.
Thank you. Bring it to commissioner discussion on this. Start with Commissioner Barr.
I don't have any questions or comments. I've actually been a part of the process, so pretty familiar with it all the way down to the smallest detail. Thanks.
Perfect. Commissioner Gilman.
Nothing else for me. I think a pretty good understanding of this from the last time it was presented. I think my concerns were the cost, so I appreciate seeing that we're trying to keep that in consideration and, make a modified enhanced, I guess, for lack of a better term, and, keep this, at a reasonable price while taking the opportunity to capture the value that, this opportunity gives us. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bose.
I don't have any further questions or comments. I appreciate the clarity of the presentation.
Yeah. Commissioner Overby.
Yeah, I don't have any other comments as well. I appreciate what's going on, and I think you guys are proceeding as you need to. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Archambault.
No questions for me. Nice work, Philip and Laura, and everybody involved. You too, Jim.
Commissioner O'Neill.
No, none for me. I think you folks did a great job synthesizing our comments and probably comments from City Council. So well done. Good luck with the negotiations on the contract, the MOU.
For sure. All right. That's everyone on the commission side. I don't have any additional comments. Again, thank you. I think appreciated the detailed look at this in October, and yeah, we're excited to see this move forward. I think in reviewing my notes from our last conversation about this, everybody was sort of supportive of a range of options here, and we talked about maybe some hybrid of the two approaches, and it seems like we're sort of settling in a nice place with this proposal here. So looking forward to see it go forward. Mr. Golding, do we have any public commenters?
There is no one signed up at this time, Chairman.
All right, so bring it back to the commission then, seeking a vote on this.
Motion to approve.
I second the motion.
Seconded by Commissioner O'Neill. Thank you. Is there any discussion around the motion? All right, bring it to a vote. Commissioner Archambault.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Barr.
Aye.
Commissioner Bose.
Aye.
Commissioner Gilman.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Aye.
Commissioner Overby.
Aye.
Aye for myself. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right. Next item, Russell Street and Charles Street seasonal parking prohibition.
Okay. I get to do this again. So narrow streets. It's hard to believe, but we've this is year 3 that we've been working together on the narrow streets implementation. Unfortunately, the pandemic has prevented further data collection and further work, but we do have some work that we want to do that extends from last year. So just to kind of get us back up to speed with narrow streets, in 2017, which was 3 years ago, staff and the commission worked together and agreed that the best course of action would be to take a comprehensive look at narrow streets citywide and bring forward a policy that can guide decisions to ensure fairness moving forward. So based on this narrow streets policy, in collaboration with the fire department and DPW maintenance, we brought forward this recommendation, and our first implementation was in fall of 2018. And this was the seasonal parking restrictions on Germain, Latham, and Hoover. And then in fall of 2019, last year, the commission approved one-sided parking on Charles and Russell from January to March. Also to get us back up to speed. So what is a narrow street? Narrow street is a residential street, and it's 28 feet wide or less from curb to curb. So after discussions with the city fire department, it was determined that 14 feet is the fire department minimum, and that's the preferred width for clearance. The winter maintenance team also has 14 feet as a preferred width for clearance. So after last year's narrow streets work, the city now has 17 narrow streets which have less than 14 feet of effective travel width with no existing restrictions. So we're chipping away at it, which is good. So as we've discussed before, we're continuing forward with this measured approach to implementing parking restrictions on these narrow streets. We have this history of these narrow streets. This approach has allowed us to balance the community needs, the fire department requirements, and maintenance needs. And we have been observing and analyzing the impacts and also collecting data as we go. So we started the parking restrictions with the streets which are most constraining. This is why those streets that I already mentioned, Germain, Latham, and then Hoover was a request by the residents. And then Russell and Charles was last year because of the funky geometry. If you remember from last year, come on. This was from January of 2019. The truck is Commissioner Archambault pointed out, sometimes it's one picture that jumps out at us, and I think this was the one picture from last year that jumped out at all of us as a situation that we needed to remedy. And several folks mentioned that what if that was a fire truck, and local residents also had mentioned on C-Click Fix, well, what if that was a fire truck? Because if it was an emergency and not a recycling situation. And we've also had a lot of discussions around how much space the fire department needs to do their work. It's not just the width of the vehicle itself, but it's also all the equipment that they need to use so that they can do their work. Get us back up to speed on the streets that we're talking about this evening. Charles Street, which is in the Old North End, and it's 26 feet wide. And during summertime, there's 10 feet of existing roadway available for emergency vehicles, and that's what's available during the wintertime as well, which when you get a lot of snow, that can become even more constraining. Pretty much the same statistics for Russell Street. And so some of our data collection, here's occupancy counts of both streets. And just to kind of get us back up to speed with that, this information tells us how much parking is available for residents or unavailable. And the occupancy counts in January and February of this year did not raise any major red flags. So it's important to note that these counts were conducted prior to the pandemic. So this is what I would anticipate as the peak use during winter restrictions, because there were college students that were there. It was not the problem that a lot of the residents were concerned about. So that's good. So our recommendation is to continue the restriction. So this last year was a pilot. So we would continue the seasonal parking restriction January 1st to March 1st. And it would be on the south side of Charles, the west side of Russell, and this would maximize the number of parking spaces. So our January to March recommendation, that's from last year. So another timeline, you can kind of see where we were, and where we're at, and where we're going. Unfortunately, any future efforts with our narrow streets, I can't really collect data. We wouldn't get an accurate count because of the pandemic. So once life goes back to normal, whatever that means, then we can reconnoiter and talk about what our future efforts are for narrow streets. Happy to take some questions.
Thank you for that presentation. So Commissioner Overby.
I'm fine. I think it's great. We're going to keep going with that. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Barr.
I'm also fine. My daughter actually had lived on Charles Street at one point, and I used to remark all the time how narrow that street was, trying to get through. So thanks, staff. Good work.
Still narrow. All right. Commissioner O'Neill.
I guess my one comment is just the last email that came in from one of the residents, Carl Lukop on Russell Street.
Yep.
So I just want to kind of, I saw it really as we were sitting down for this meeting. So it sounds like he's kind of fine with it, even though it's an inconvenience. But based on your data, there wasn't a significant impact, at least on availability of parking. And some of the issues that he's talking about here, including summer traffic from the park.
Right. So, one thing that he mentioned probably is the resident parking. Like,
Yeah,
I know that was something that was brought up a lot when we had meetings with the neighborhood. What is the purpose of resident parking? Well, the purpose is because, you have these streets that are next to these big parking generators, like the baseball field or the hospital or the downtown core. So those places, it makes sense to do that. But if the residents are the ones that are parking on that street, and data kind of showed that percentages weren't really changing in terms of the data, then granting them resident parking, they think that it solves a problem, but it doesn't. It actually, what we're doing is we're opening up Pandora's box on their street. So now we are bringing parking enforcement onto their street, where if folks come to visit, we've had many residents come to commission, and why is the city so punitive, and why can't my guests park here without getting a $75 ticket? Well, you want a resident parking on your street. So it's not really a solution. They're not within a designated zone to be a resident parking street, and it's not the solution that they think that it would be.
No, I agree. I kind of wanted to just make sure that we at least acknowledge this public comment in an email. But one thing he mentions is the notorious white Volkswagen van, which was in that photo.
Yeah.
So who is the owner of that white van? And is that something that we can encourage residents to use C-Click Fix for if it really is a problem that a vehicle is parking in the travel lane? So I don't want to make a problem where it's not. I totally support this. And it looks like even this resident who has some issues is supporting it. But if there are problems, kind of reminding that outreach that C-Click Fix is a tool to get the notorious white VW ticketed or something.
I will send them an email and have a discussion. There are some regulations that we have. Cars are not allowed to park on the street for longer than 72 hours. They have to move, and you definitely can't block the travelway. So, there's things that can be done, and those were discussions that took place when we had the neighborhood meeting as well. But, folks want to be neighborly. They don't necessarily want to call.
I know, yeah.
It's a tough one.
I really think this idea of this pilot that we got going last year and that we're revisiting now, even Councillor Nodell's comments that it wasn't as bad as they had anticipated, and that it worked smoothly. I think kudos to the communication and implementing this and now moving forward. So thank you.
Welcome. Team effort. Commission was involved with this too.
Commissioner Gilman.
I'm okay. I supported this when we rolled it out. I think based on positive feedback from those involved, no reason not to continue.
Yeah. Commissioner Archambault.
Thank you. I distinctly remember this last year when we talked about it, and one of the main reasons we gave it a one-year pilot rather than make it permanent last year was because of the concern over the abbreviated snow season that was special for this street from January to March.
Right.
Wanted to check in again on that. You included a little bit of information in the packet, but maybe you could speak to that, Philip.
Right. I think that was it was a compromise that we had developed with the neighborhood to give it more of a seasonal restriction, January to March. I think I kind of understand, where you're driving at here, that why can't we do this from like the other streets from December to April? I don't know. It's I think if that was something we were going to do, then we definitely would have to do more outreach with the neighborhood and let them know that we were going to do that.
Yeah, sure. So I don't think it's fair to anticipate where I was going with that, but in
Oh, I'm
fact,
sorry.
I was doing the exact opposite. That
Oh, okay.
seemed to work well. However, my concern is that if we move forward with this, my question to you is, are we now telling the city that our snow season is officially January to March, that it's no longer December to April?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, and so that's, this.
I could offer some perspective on that, because
Oh yeah,
I was part of the conversations with Philip last year about this, and that was, I don't think we're trying to, I guess, communicate that our snow season starts in January and ends in March. I think our thought process was that the most extreme periods in time in the season is January to March because of continuing frozen conditions. So in other words, all that snow would not melt. And so that was the most constrained, challenging time of year. And we were trying to be as flexible as we could with the neighborhood to allow as much parking throughout the year as we could. So I think that's kind of how we arrived at that. It doesn't mean that we couldn't consider some other solution, but I do think that that is really kind of the bottom line with trying to manage parking in that tight condition. Unless we begin the process of removing snow consistently with every event, which I don't think we have the resources to do that for that neighborhood or street.
no, right, yeah, you mentioned that in the past. To get the bucket loader in there to do that is not really feasible. There's so many areas in the city to hit. But are we opening those doors? So let's say there are restrictions somewhere else in the city, and the residents say, "Hey, I want that short season too." Does this open those doors that we effectively are now saying we have to entertain those notions?
No, not necessarily. I think every street is different. Each condition in each street is a different circumstance. So I think we make arguments based on the conditions on each street as we work on them.
So I think the intent was to have this be a trial to decide if this was too forgiving, and that we maybe needed to broaden the range of prohibition. But that, as Philip said, I don't think we can get to that stage without having another conversation with the neighborhood. We were trying to be as forgiving as we could at the start as a learning process.
Yes.
So I don't know what the will of the commission is about that, but at least that's the process of thinking at that time.
Yeah, so I would agree. I mean, if we were heading to the route of a December to April timeframe, we could not approve that tonight, right? Residents.
Correct.
But I am just thinking alternatively, because we're saying, yeah, it's applicable to this street, but when looking for a little bit of data to back that up, it really is none, right? We just really manage the conflict in this particular street, and that's the primary source of how that time frame comes about. And so if that's the premise to which we allow a snow season for parking, then that becomes the premise elsewhere too, that other streets could use to justify. Like, hey, I'm going to dream up a conflict and say we need a shorter season.
Yeah, I can just add
please.
to that. Also, part of the consideration, as Philip mentioned, we look at it street by street, and then considering this shorter time frame, we did that as well because on this street in particular, there are several properties that do not have any driveways, and also considered the adjacent other parking resources. So nearby, there are other resident parking only streets, which these residents would not be able to park on,
Right.
and other streets that have parking restrictions or limited capacity to handle that. So that was part of the consideration, and what would be considered as well if we were to change the timeframes for other streets.
So Susan, I think you're onto something there in be honest, 'cause that would be data that could be used to justify such a decision, whether it be, homesteads with a lack of driveway or lack of parking, combined with the density of the residential, for example. Like those would be data sets you could use to justify such a thing, rather than avoiding conflict. That's a tougher one for me. So, if there were maybe some assurance, is that something you could foresee that we can implement for future requests, right? The next street that comes along and says, "Hey, I want my snow season to be January to March." Like, could we say we must have this data in place in order to evaluate that?
Yes, I think so. And I think, we could, in entertaining those proposals, look at kind of the full neighborhood and available parking resources.
One thing worth noting, this street had some handicap spaces or disabled spaces, parking spaces that were displaced by that decision. And so we were trying to limit also its impact on those people who have those disabilities.
Right. And I would also say that when we enacted this on Germain and Latham and Hoover, I felt like there was a lot of resistance, and we all, and commission included, had to be brave and had to, stand firm and say, this is what we're going to do. And so I don't think that, we would be, for lack of a better term, afraid to present that on other streets. And if it makes sense for another street to be January to March, okay, then that makes sense. But if it makes sense for that street to be December to April, then it makes sense. It depends on the context of the street.
Yeah, right. But that's abstract, right? Like, this is the data points that. Really?
No, Susan had mentioned, and I had mentioned, the context of Russell and Charles, the lack of driveways for many of the homes.
That's what I'm talking about, though. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Philip, but that's what I'm talking about. We can't say it makes sense for a street. We're actually going to say lack of driveways, residential density, handicap spaces, whatever. I'm not going to say I know what the formula is, but those are less abstract things, the data points that people can wrap their heads around to understand why, a street would get passed with something like this versus not. And that's what I love to see, right? Because anything we can wrap our heads around, all the better, to having buy-in to that community as well. Such as you found here. You did good work, right? You did.
Good point, Commissioner Archambault. I think to your point, as Susan mentioned, we're supportive of putting pens to paper when the next round comes around and make sure we have documentation for how we would evaluate different requests based on the character.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think your point is not lost, Commissioner Archambault. I think that is an important piece, is what precedent are we setting in these decisions, and how do we differentiate one street from another and be very specific.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I have no other questions beyond that. So thank you so much for entertaining my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Bose.
No questions for me. Thank you.
All right. I think that's everyone and myself. I had questions of similar line to Commissioner Archambault, and I'll just say that, there was certainly intent when this narrow streets policy came up to, take an objective approach to this, and we sort of sorted the list of streets by some criteria and picked off a couple, and in doing so, some other issues are coming to light, or nuances of other streets, and it sounds like, and I'm supportive of the next time this comes up. I think, we have a couple more criteria to consider and to put forward in that ranking. I have nothing further there. Mr. Golding, do we have anyone for public comment on this item?
None at this time, Chair Hogan.
All right. Thank you. We are seeking a vote on this item. I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Overby, yes.
I concur with the concerns that Commissioner Archambault has expressed, and I'm wondering, can we put into is there something we could do now to actually just put in those criteria that you just listed, about the handicap site and the lack of driveways, so that it's very clear on the face of what we're doing here. If we're going to make this a permanent thing with those dates, can that be part of our thing, of our proposal that we vote on? My thought would be, if we're still having some questions about whether we want to do that snow season and setting a precedent, if we could say this is another temporary 1-year thing while we're gathering the current status of what is the season that Burlington has for snow and cold weather and those criteria that we can use going forward. So do we want to sort of add the ones that you've just put in there? So it's very clear that we're going in the right direction, and the next folks will see these other kind of factors, and we will become more organized in our way of doing that with our own criteria like that. I don't know if that's possible here. It would be like make it a temporary, another 1-year application of this and not making it a permanent thing. And then we, under the impression we're going to definitely do the work to make sure that we have a very defined, what's the A, winter snow season dates, and B, the criteria that we use to assess whether we use that or something broader or narrower.
Can I add a comment real quick?
Sure.
I don't disagree with you, Commissioner Overby and Commissioner Archambault, except that there's even other things that, because no street is the same. Are we going to say too many trees on a street? One side has a big hill that it makes it difficult to pile snow. So that there could be so many things that you might want to write into this. I almost think that it'd be better to say, rather than identify those specific things, just to say something to the effect of, if there are extenuating circumstances which may allow a January to March versus a December to April. You see what I'm saying? Because we're just going to paint ourselves into a corner, and then a year from now, address another one that says, that it's precipitous terrain on either side, or, I don't know. Could be anything. Just food for thought.
No, I get that. So we would say that our normal winter season is December to April, but in this circumstance, we've set it at a narrower because of circumstances on the street without specifying them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for this specific one, we're specifying January to March, and it says that in the recommendation, and we're approving it based on what they said, right? I think it said, and I'd have to go back to it. I'm on one screen, so for me to go back to see, does it say, Phil, in there about the reason why we're doing it January to March? And if not, it would be good to just make sure that that's recorded in there, so that when we refer back to it and somebody else wants something, we can point to that and say, it's not just because we decided on this day to do it, it's because, right?
That's where I was going with that. We very specifically said the handicap spot and the lack of driveways. That's why we have a narrower time frame.
Right.
Right. In this circumstance, rather than generally all the list. I get it. So that would make it clear to somebody else that was why it was a narrower one than our standard one.
And I'd be less inclined to have it go to another year and then revisit it again, because we could keep kicking this down the road for quite a ways. That's just my opinion. So
I'm fine if we add those.
My read of this is that there's specific ordinance language and parking restrictions for these streets on the agenda here. The rest of this is really like backstory about reasoning and so forth. It would be in our minutes and for us to review in our notes the next time it comes up. But at the recommendation that we're being asked to consider is specific language around specific streets here.
May I jump in here?
Sure.
Looking at the reasons, there's a bit here, but best I can see is that there's a statement that says the January 1st to March 1st parking restrictions during the coldest part of winter with consistent below freezing conditions, and snow easily accumulates. So again, I'm not going to argue that data, of course, but that is the data that's presented here and effectively defines that season as that, because it's the coldest part of the winter. And I'm just saying that the custom data ought to be considered in there. And I think Commissioner Barr has a good point, right? We don't want to be creating a list of all the possibilities of what that data should be. So, I mean, the department deserves the flexibility to be able to conclude whatever that data might be. But I'd rather see that in a report, for example, so few driveways or whatever, than, it's just really cold, because then I see consistency in the policy from a December to April. And it'll feel unfair to the community, and people will wonder, well, what are we calling our snow season? And I know this is just one street right now, so I'm certainly projecting perhaps a future that may never exist, but I guess that's the way my mind works. So perhaps, one idea Commissioner Overby had was to do perhaps another year pilot, for example, with that data focus. Another idea would be maybe just to add maybe one more bullet that just maybe compels the department to use data, and we will let you define data however you wish for any future requests. Those are two ideas that pop into my head. I don't know, maybe Commissioner Overby, you had chimed in. I don't know if you have any feedback on that.
Well, I was trying to look for the language that Commissioner Hogan was, Chair Hogan was talking about, and about what, I don't see the language in here that we're changing, but my thought was just that we make it very clear that what were the reasons why we used a different date range from our other implementations, and we have 17 more streets to go, and what's the plan? So if we put this one down for this date range permanently, then we want to sort of have a basis of why we made that decision on its face. And so that's where I'm going to be keeping it narrow. I don't see the language here that, that we're actually approving. And I'm probably just missing where I'm looking, but is there a way to do that? Chair Hogan, are you saying that we have one set of language that's already going to go into the ordinance, and that's what we have to work with, and we don't put any logic into the ordinance language that we already have to vote on?
I'm not sure. Phil, do you know what?
So, the
relevant ordinance?
Traffic regulations are what the traffic regulations are. I think what you're discussing is the SOP. So how we collect data, how we go about what narrow streets are, what, how we go about these things. I think they're almost like two separate conversations. That's my take on it.
Chair Hogan, can I offer something here?
Please.
So my belief is last year we opened this idea just as a trial and understood from a staff perspective that the commission wanted us to return and discuss this to decide whether or not this was something that would need to be either modified, removed, or indefinitely continue forward. And so I think, and then, my apologies, maybe we weren't clear in this communication, but I believe our recommendation is to indefinitely continue forward with this prohibition as currently adopted. So I don't think there's any need for anything specific within ordinance. It was really just an understanding with the commission about our commitment as staff to return to this conversation to further deliberate and decide.
Thank you. So, could I just clarify a bit? Then, the recommendation here in the packet say, there's 3 bullet points: restriction south side of Charles Street, et cetera, west side of Russell Street, relocate ADA space with dates attached to those 3 things. Is ordinance spelled out that specifically? And we're saying that, like, we put this in last year with a 1-year suspense or something. We need to make it permanent.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Your motion last year was only for 1 year. we'd like you to approve tonight this, the 3 bullets to be a permanent ordinance, and that you can also, as part of that motion, request that we develop a list of criteria to help determine the duration of the parking prohibition.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Archambault, comment?
Yeah, actually, Norm, what you said was very prescient. I think that was an astute observation, and yeah, we're kind of nitpicking on like how the department goes about drawing their conclusions rather than speaking to the ordinance itself. So in a way, you're right. You know, the language is what it is, and you know, to throw something else on there, it's kind of a monkey wrench in there. So I guess, you know, I could back off. You know, I do trust you, of course, and I think you do good work. And I would also say, just open this up to the possibility of confusion for others in terms of like, how does that street get January to March versus December to April? And it's something to think through, like, how are we going to tackle that? Whether we involve Mr. Goulding and his expertise in communications, or however it happens, I think that'll help to eliminate some of that confusion.
Well, I think that Chapin's recommendation of a policy that supports the explanation in hand is adequate. When people call and ask, we can explain, or we can have it in documents that is transparent and available to the public. But I think it's just impossible to write every ordinance in the supporting evidence why it just needs to be in the regs.
Commissioner Overby.
I think that makes complete sense. And as long as we have somewhere the criteria that we in our minds recognize when we're trying to apply. And I know Commissioner Barr is like, well, we don't want to have the universe of every kind of thing, trees and hills and all. But it would be helpful if the public was aware of the factors that they can understand, we've used to make a difference between December and April and January to March. So I'm very happy with going with that, as long as there's some work put into that. And then there is a way for us to explain it. I was going to suggest that we just put it in our minutes that we approved this, to continue permanently, and the basis was because of these were the factors that we're depending on. But I like the idea of having the Public Works Department actually come up with the criteria that they think are relevant, that should be considered the next 17 streets that we're going to be addressing this with.
Sure. Commissioner Barr to comment? And then,
yeah, just very quickly. I mean, I like all this discussion, this conversation, and where it's headed. And I'm thinking that if we could refer to, and maybe I'll make a motion and add this to the motion, but just to talk it out, if there is right now a criteria or an SOP, standard operating procedure, as Phil referred to it, it's a dynamic document that can be changed, because when we do end up addressing another street that has different criteria than we've dealt with, that's in our minutes right now, we will have to review it based on that new criteria, right? It might be too hard to comprehensively go around the entire city and gather it all into one list. This is what makes it so that it's, December to April. This is what makes it so that it's January to March. But we could really get wrapped around the axle here trying to figure this out.
Thanks. Director Spencer.
I've tried to summarize what I understood the conversation to be, and there could be a sample motion to approve traffic regulations described in the packet, and to direct staff to develop written policy to inform decisions on recommended duration of future seasonal parking restrictions.
Can I say so moved?
I was just going to do that.
Go ahead. I'll let you have it.
Thank you very much. After my, stir in the pot here, I figure I got to do something. So yeah, I will move to accept that.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the suggested language. Motion by Commissioner Archambault and seconded by Commissioner Barr. Is there any discussion around that motion? Seeing none, let's take it to a vote. Then. Commissioner Archambault,
Aye.
Commissioner Barr,
Aye.
Commissioner Bose,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilman,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Aye.
Commissioner Overby,
Aye.
and I for myself. It passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Philip.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Same to you.
Okay.
Hey,
Moving
Santa.
forward, sliding into the number 8 slot on our agenda here is extension of 2 hours free at Marketplace Garage. Welcome, Mr. Paget.
Good evening, everyone. Let me get my sharing going here if I can.
And given the hour, Assistant Director Paget, I'd suggest hitting the high wave tops, and folks got the memo.
Yep, that's what I'm planning on doing.
I figured.
Can you see my screen? The memo?
Got it, yes, thank you.
Got it? Okay, all right, great. I mean, just got it. Sorry, I've got this other screen up there. Here we go. Now I look like a human. So, thanks for having me back again tonight. Back in June, we did a bunch of sweeping changes to parking rates in downtown Burlington and the garages particularly. And one of those sweeping changes was the removal of 2 hour free from the Marketplace Garage. We came back to you in July and asked that implementation of removal of 2 hour free be delayed until January 1, with the reasonable at that time expectation that we may be past the COVID crisis in some material way. Obviously, we are not there yet. There are still challenges to downtown. There are still challenges to our budget. And for all the reasons as Chapin said, I articulated in the memo, we would, at this point, we think it's reasonable to push the implementation of the removal of 2 hour free till April 1st. And a note, just a side note, there is a typo in here down below. I left a July 1st in there because we were deliberating and debating the merits of April versus July. But in consultation with the mayor and after a lot of reasonable discussion, we feel like, we don't want to kick the can too far down the road. We want to be optimistic. We want to keep. We can always come back to you in April if we need to push it again. So, anyway, I'm happy to leave it at that. We're basically delaying the implementation of this from January 1st to April 1st. And it's important to note that we do have funding. We have about $60,000 in funding available to support a validation program. So it's not a cliff. So April 1 is not the absolute removal of 2 hours free. It's the changing of the rate at the garage. We have a validation program to support we're guessing between a month and 2 months worth of transition period where people can get validations and still get 2 hours free. So it's not like a cliff hanging out there. So anyway, so that's the wave tops. I'm happy to entertain any questions, talk a little more about the financial impact if you're interested. I think I'll leave it at that unless there's any major topic I missed, Chapin. I'm trying to be brief here.
All right, thank you. Back for commissioner discussion here. Commissioner Bose, on your end.
Sorry, no questions from me.
Okay. Commissioner Overby.
I'm just wondering about the financial impact. Is there any other sources of, any of this COVID-19 federal, contributions of money to states and municipalities? Is any of that potentially on the horizon available to Burlington that might help with this so that we don't, fall into that problem about our loans on the garages?
None has. I'm not aware of any. I've asked about it a couple different times. It's not, I mean, the city doesn't have any. I'm fairly sure that none of the money's coming to the city. I don't know. I can't speak to it specifically. I don't have it. And as far as the loans, I know the clerk treasurer's office is working with the bank to restructure the loans so that we are not in violation. But it's not the place we want to be. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We have, if Burlington High School is coming in, we may see some revenue from that. We may not, depending on what type of help they need, because they're in crisis as well, and they're part of the city. So we all try to play together. So we'll be back in February timeframe to give you a package about how we're going to work with. I've been in conversations with the high school, and they've got so many moving parts going right now that we just said we'll talk about it in January, and we'll come to you in February, and we'll have a plan. And we do have a short-term tenant coming in. The state of Vermont is doing massive construction on their garage, and we're selling them. It's gone up. I think I sent you an email back in August about this, and it was at 380, and now they need like 450, 480. So that's going to be a nice little shot in the arm for us. But that's only for 6 months or so. So we do. I mean, there is hope. I mean, the garages. I mean, despite COVID, the garage, Marketplace Garage, was full 3 times. It was full in October, it was full in November, and it was full in December. Once each month. Usually it's 2 or 3 times a day, 3 or 4 times a week. But point is, people still want to come downtown. So we want to support that. So there's hope. There's hope, but we got to struggle through this.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Barr.
I'm in support of this because with the COVID pandemic, and it just seems to keep dragging on, even with the vaccination coming in. And I just think that the Burlington businesses downtown need this to just try and entice more people to come in there. I'd much rather have people walking and keep the bike lanes open so they can bike down there or take the bus. But I think this is something important to consider. And like Jeff said, we're not making this something that's going to go into June or July or something. We're just pushing it to April for now, and then we'll readdress it then. So I agree with that.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Neill.
Yeah, I agree with it.
All right, Commissioner Archambault.
Jeff, thanks for staying on top of all this. It means a lot, I think, to the downtown, the business community, us on the commission. So I'm just personally very grateful that we have you at the helm to oversee all this. It really helps me sleep at night. And, there are certainly challenges. We're only just opening our eyes to some of the challenges that are going to face us down the road from this pandemic. And eventually, garages have to be maintained, right? So if we don't make money this year, got to make it up somewhere else. I'm hopeful that we'll come back to a good economy in 2021, and maybe we can start to shore up some of those funds towards simply maintaining our garages. And it's super important. So anyway, thanks for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gilman, anything on your end?
Nope, I'm aligned. I think this makes sense.
Thank you. That's just me. I have no further question. Thank you for the presentation here, and I think it's a sensible move, all things considered. All right. Mr. Golding, do we have anyone interested in public comment at this time?
Chair Hogan, I don't see anybody signed up for public comment, so it does not look like anyone is at this time.
All right, thank you. Bring it back to the commission. We are seeking a vote on this item.
Can I make a motion to pass the language as recommended?
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Archambault, seconded by Commissioner Barr. Thank you. Is there any discussion around that motion? All right, so we'll go to a vote. Commissioner Overby.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Aye.
Commissioner Gilman,
Aye.
Commissioner Bose,
Aye.
Commissioner Barr,
Aye.
Commissioner Archambault.
Aye.
Aye for myself, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we move forward to our item on Queen City Park Road and Burton Hub proposal.
Great. So Senior Engineer Susan Molzon is here to answer any questions. This was a request by Commissioner O'Neill to provide some background. So we put together a memo in the packet. Happy to proceed however you would like. Whether you want a quick presentation, given the hour, we're just happy to answer questions.
Could I interject with just one question that might help any information that might come along? Is what are we looking to approve? What are we voting on?
Nothing. This is purely, it was an informational request from a commissioner, and we had provided the information.
Oh, all right, because it's in consent agenda, so that I guess that implied that we were voting on something. So I was mistaken then.
Well, consent, how I understand it, and maybe I'm incorrect, that you can accept a communication that has no action in a consent agenda. It just acknowledges that it's been shared with you.
You're far more seasoned than me, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. We are not seeking a vote here. Welcome discussion on it. Commissioner Overby.
I had asked to pull this off of the consent agenda so that I could actually get a little bit more information. I really have been working to understand the traffic documents that are provided in this report that we got. And so I had actually communicated with the engineer that had worked on this project, and I keep mispronouncing her name. I apologize, Susan Molzon. Today, and I was just trying to figure out what we have here that makes it more understandable to me, the basis of some of the information. Not that we have a vote, but that we periodically do get things with these kind of traffic report documents. So I was hoping that I could get some clarification on how that works. And so as an example, I had sort of proposed that Engineer Molzon would sort of show one of the the questions that I had was the way that the documents were and trying to compare what to what, and how to even interpret them. And I just feel like it might be helpful. She explained to me the way the footnotes and how you even can look at what is the data that you're looking at and how you can compare the data from 2008, which is one set of data, and the data of projection of 2028. So what I was suggesting that would be helpful to me and maybe to others was to take a look at the document, for example, on our packet, pages 12 and 13, sort of are the data that relate to westbound traffic on Queen City Park Road. And so I'm not sure if it would be helpful for the engineer to actually explain the way that if you were to, I don't know, those of you are looking at that yourself, but to be able to understand what's actually are we seeing here. And so it makes it possible for us to actually have a meaningful discussion. Or myself, I'm talking about myself. Maybe everybody else is familiar with this. But if we were to look at page 12 of the packet, you should see data that has to do with that the westbound Queen City Park Road. And my question for starting with that was this is related to potential access to the Burton Hub project that's in the works and has been approved for a conditional use permit. So the question in my mind is, how are people going to get there and how are they going to get back? And these traffic data are what are supposed to help us understand what is anticipated. And it would look to me like people are going to either get in via the Queen City Park Road or they're going to get in by Home Avenue. and how can we interpret what we're seeing in these documents? And so just as an example, there is westbound data. So to get onto Queen City off of US 7 Shelburne Road, heading west to get into the vicinity of the Burton hub, there are the 2008 document, and then there's the 2028. So I was hoping, and I don't know, those of you who are looking at it, if you look at the bottom, there's some very small footer information that tells you on page 12, it says that this is actually a statistics that are predicated on being no Champlain Parkway, but a Burton hub being built. So that, just for the sake of the details, and you can look around because there's so many that look all the same. And so I'm sticking to just page 12 and 13. You look at the bottom, you look at the top, you can see the location, you can see that it's an unsignalized intersection. Look at the bottom, you'll see that it's the year 2008 or Champlain Park, no build, and Burton build. So just for the sake of that, how can we see what we're seeing between the change of what the 2008 traffic is versus the 2028 projected traffic? And so I was, if we look at this, it sort of says, what each of the items are. And I don't know if it's going to be, I asked to just sort of say, how can we compare traffic volume in 2008, people that are northbound making a left turn, going west on Queen City Park, let's say there's 33 vehicles an hour. That's for 2008. So in 2028, it still says 33 vehicles an hour. Now, I don't understand something like that. So I'm wondering how to understand these documents. So is it possible for engineer Susan Molson to be able to sort of give me a little bit of a follow through as to how those numbers compare and why there's that decision that was made that there's no impact, there's going to be no impact on Queen City Road, based on the statistics shown by this traffic study that was paid for and provided by the developer of the Burton project. Does that make any sense? I'm not sure. I rambled a little bit, but I was trying to give you a foundation of what I was trying to understand and hopefully give us some help to understand these documents, because I think we've seen them before and we'll see them again.
Yes, sure. I'm happy to provide some context, maybe just taking a step back. So what I've provided in the memo or in the packet is the cover page kind of summarizing where the project is at now based on our understanding and DPW's role in this development process. So I've also, as an attachment to our memo to the commission for tonight, I included a memo from June 2020, which is the DPW's review of the traffic study that was prepared by Burton's traffic engineers. So Burton is one that prepared the traffic analysis as part of their development and permit approval process. And I can maybe share my screen quickly, might help us kind of walk through some of those documents.
So Susan, would it be helpful to also explain the framework of us working with a peer consultant to review this in the very unique situation of contending with a parkway that's either in or not in this conversation, and the understanding the kind of nuance of that? But also, I think for the commissioner's benefit, we might want to, if you really want to do a deep dive, the general premise of how you arrive at additional traffic introduced to the traffic system, how it's redistributed within the traffic system, and how it's analyzed to determine its impact on the system and if it's adequate capacity or not. So there's, you can get into the specifics to this particular request, or do you want to talk about how our general analysis kind of happens and how our role plays out with planning and zoning?
My thought was to deal with it sort of exactly where you're saying, what the process is in a lot of ways, so that these documents are not sort of, we can actually digest them and make use
Yep.
of them. And in this case, and I've obviously was looking at them in the context of the North Avenue, Cambrian Rise intersection and those traffic. So I've been looking at this and I feel like it's very challenging.
Yeah.
And particularly, and one of the comments that was made, I know, is that the way that the output comes out of for these reports, it doesn't come out in like the two documents that should be compared to each other, the 2008. So you're looking at, trying to figure out which two do you match up, and looking at the small print at the bottom was really a challenge. So I feel like we need some help understanding the process of making it easy for us to understand in general and your process. And so it doesn't have to be done tonight. If we feel like it's too late, I'm more than willing to go forward and do this at a time when it's, would be better. And if it's only me that's interested in this, then I'm willing to try to do it with somebody one-on-one. But I feel like it's an important thing as a person on the commission to be able to have some credibility that I actually have been able to understand this. And I'm not just going to be saying, oh yeah, it looks great. And I don't have any really ability to go, oh, in 2008, they said there's only going to be 33 cars making a left turn onto Queen City. In 2028, there are going to be only 33 cars making a left turn onto Queen City, heading north on Shelburne Road. That just doesn't compute to me. And so something about this I'm not understanding.
Yep. Well,
that's where I'm at.
You probably found the most complicated of analysis and development review analysis that needs to occur that we've experienced. But, we can talk you through just a general approach, and then you can begin to decipher some of what is in there. But even as, I've not been following it directly. Susan has, and she has all the history. But I can tell you, even reading it myself is pretty complex given the various permutations and possibilities and issues that go with, and assumptions that go with this analysis. So I don't know if the commission wants either Susan or I to go through just a general explanation of the process, or if you want to deep dive into this individual request.
Well, I think that the other commissioners should, weigh in on this, because I don't want to hold everybody up. I do think it's an important thing that we understand. And I don't feel like the numbers compute for me based on just the initial looking at it. So I would like to look at them, in detail, but we don't have any regulatory input on it. So it's not a thing we have to do as a commission. I just thought it would be useful for the commission to understand just as well as me how these documents work and where to look in the fine print to actually be able to compare documents.
We're happy to entertain whatever approach the commission wants to take.
Chair Hogan, I defer to you on this.
Sure. I'd like to hear from Commissioner O'Neill.
So I was the one who opened this can of worms when I asked Director Spencer, just for really, I wanted an update on this. I felt like this is could be perceived as a controversial build. Because it's on the border between Burlington and South Burlington. And certainly some of us have heard from folks from Burlington and from South Burlington about this, residents in that area. And so I just felt like I really need really kind of high level concept on where we're going. And because Burton had some of their traffic studies and then reading the report makes a little bit more sense about what recommendations DPW is making, just so that we can, or I can better respond when someone asks about this, because I feel like it makes the commission and public works better if we can respond in an informed way. So for me, I was looking really for some of the high level pieces, what the next steps are. And because it's this puzzle with missing pieces, like the Champlain Parkway, how that's going to factor in, to me, I felt even more muddied. So if there's any way, you can give, is it possible to give the kind of the quick and dirty on the really high level, what the next steps are, what we can anticipate as far as any future decisions for us. And then if we want to go into sort of the data analysis on traffic projections, perhaps we can leave that for another time when we're more bright-eyed.
Well, I'm happy to jump in, Susan, unless you want to take this.
I can take this.
Okay, all right.
So I think I can share my screen and hit a few of those points that we just talked about. So first, I would direct you to the December 16th memo for this commission. Down on the second page identifies what the DRB approved as part of this permit, which includes DPW's recommendations. So that's kind of the high level, what's been recommended, what is required by the permit, and sort of what's being done to address the traffic. Kind of specifics of this project. So here is a map from the traffic study submitted by Burton, which just identifies the intersections that were analyzed. So here is Route 7. So there's a signalized intersection at Queen City Park Road, the one leg. There's an unsignalized intersection at another leg of Queen City Park Road. There's the 189 ramp, intersection of Route 7 and Home Ave, intersection of Pine and Home, intersection of the Champlain Parkway and Home, and the intersection of Home, Austin, and Queen City Park Road. So those are the intersections included in the analysis. Commissioner Overby, your questions, I believe, were primarily related to the tables that look like this, which are really the detailed printouts from the traffic analysis software. So this is, as Norm mentioned, pretty comprehensive, in-depth technical reports that were submitted by the applicant, really as support and backup documentation for their traffic study. So I would, rather than going through these, I would focus your attention, just gonna scroll through to the summary pages. There are a lot of these. So this information and analysis, almost there, here we go, is summarized in these two tables that are further down in that packet. So this captures some of the key information and the results from that previous analysis. So as Norm mentioned, this is a pretty complex analysis. It deals with, you can see the headings at the top, the condition without the Champlain Parkway no build, and then the Champlain Parkway built. And then for each of those, further goes into the Burton no build, Burton build for each of those. And for each one of them, further 2008, which for this study is used as the existing today's condition, which matches up with the traffic analysis for the Champlain Parkway. And then the 2028 is the future projected 20 years. And those numbers from 2008 are still valid now based on, we haven't seen as much traffic growth as was anticipated. So those traffic numbers are still consistent. So kind of from these charts, the main things is really just comparing the columns. So we're comparing the volume capacity, vehicle delay, and level of service. Is one of the key kind of analysis and takeaways from all of this traffic analysis. So that I think would be, if you're looking to really get into the nitty-gritty, would be a good place to start comparing rather than to the full printout analysis. And these are covered both for the signalized intersections, as well as the next page is the unsignalized. And so I think I can stop there, and if there are any further questions.
Thank you for that. I'll ask Commissioner O'Neill, does that help with the flavor of overview you're interested in, or are there other things about timing you want to get into?
Yeah, kind of timing on what's next, and you know, I know that you indicated that Burton is going to have to do some traffic studies once the site opens up. When we think of traffic, I also want to think of the folks who are biking there. And right now, where the bike path ends onto Queen City Park, there's like if someone's turning, like there's no easy way for if you're biking back and you're heading east, right, away from Burton, you go over that little bridge and you're going to turn left onto the bike path. There's no crossing there. Certainly the excitement of being able to bike to a venue like this would be fantastic. And I know there are lots of folks who live in the South End. That would be easy. So when we think of traffic, it's also thinking of the bikes and pedestrians. So wondering, is there an opportunity to have that included in some of the Burton studies? And then kind of what those stages are. Does any of this come back to the commission?
So regarding the bike access and the bicycle network in their surrounding area, I do not believe that is part of analysis that they perform for the DRB. I mentioned in our memo, we are undergoing some additional scoping and feasibility studies as one of our goals in furthering the planned BTV walk bike plan and increasing connectivity through our bike and sidewalk networks.
I would just add one thing to that, Susan, and that is when we have these development review requests come through, we also circulate that within the tech services team, which includes Nicole, to look at those qualitative, not quantitative issues that you're looking for. And so she does take a look at these projects as well and provides comments where appropriate. So it's not just that we're exclusively looking at operational performance, we're also considering those issues. And one of the things that Queen City, obviously in our radar, has been how do we better accommodate other modes? And so you've seen some significant reinvestment in Queen City, but there is still more to be done. And unfortunately, it takes a significant amount of money and probably a significant amount of engineering to address the balance of issues that are there on that street, given the way it was designed and built originally, which is, I think, very limited in its capacity to serve. And I think our work has improved that, but we still want to do more.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Overby.
What I think it sounds like I'm interested in looking at the detail behind the summary more than maybe other people, so that's fine. But I did have a follow-up question about the statistic on the summary chart that's called the volume to capacity ratio. Can you explain the meaningfulness of that value? I know we've heard about level of service letters, A, B, C, and F and all that, but that one is your first column on each of the summary charts. Can you explain what that ratio is? What that means? Volume to capacity ratio?
Yes, so that's a metric, obviously with traffic analysis. It compares the actual volume on each leg to the capacity that is able to handle. So the closer the number is to 1, the closer that the volume's reaching the maximum capacity of the roadway.
So
the lower numbers are better, and you'll see they're correlated to the level of service as well.
So 1 would mean that it's at exactly the number of cars that it's supposed to have per hour on that stretch. Is that what it means? Yes,
I believe it's looked at per hour.
So
maybe Norm knows.
So the answer to that is it means it's operating at its full capacity based on its design geometries. So
what does that mean?
If it can service 1,500 cars, that's what it's running at. So if you had 75% of 1,500 cars, it would be, you know, I don't know, what's 75%? 1,200, 1,300 cars?
So it's only using, so those numbers mean the proportion of its capacity that it is using.
That's correct.
Traffic
And as
is
you reach,
basically a small proportion.
and as you reach closer to 1, it goes to level some measure of failure because it's unpredictable. Models are unpredictable. So it's, you know, when you get into, and there's, as Susan had noted, the level service A through F is a kind of a qualitative explanation of the degrees of delay as a result of reaching capacity.
And is that, and oh yeah, that's that, I think that's defined as in seconds. But
Yep.
but in effect, the first one that you see there under the Queen City Park, Home Avenue, Austin Drive, westbound left from Home Ave, that one is 0.11. That would mean that it's really only like a tenth of the traffic. It's only anticipating the tenth of the traffic.
That's right.
Whereas
that,
with the build, with no Champlain Parkway and Burton build, it's 0.12. So it doesn't make any difference. What's a very infinitesimal difference of whether there's a Burton build or not.
that's correct.
That's what the statistics is saying.
And you could see an A next to it means it's highly, it's servicing well the condition. There's a very low experience of delay.
Okay, that's helpful. Well, I will think, I don't want to drag everybody else through the details of this, which is what I would like, but I will work that out in an individual way, because that would help me understand better.
Commissioner Orby, if you want.
For the same reason that Commissioner O'Neill, Ravanka said, we do get asked about these things, and
yep.
I don't want to feel like I don't have an understanding to explain in a credible way, like how this has been resolved this way.
Well, I would just say that the DRB ultimately decides these things, and staff is, I guess, providing assistance to the planning, permitting and inspection department. The commission should be aware and understand the nuances of all these things, but ultimately it's the DRB's decision that, and I'm not sure, many times, I think this is kind of the second time staff's been kind of in the middle of a decision by the DRB that we're just providing recommendations to guide the process. And so I'm struggling with what the commission would like from staff as it relates to our decisions and our recommendations.
Yeah, and I think we are aware that that was all that Commissioner O'Neill wanted was the actual what's happening down in that area. And we don't
this was not to put staff on the spot at all, but really
Yep.
to help me be able to answer some questions on something that some people have severe emotions about. That's
Yeah.
really all.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I guess what I would have an open-ended offer to any member of the commission who would like to kind of get a basic understanding of the development review process and how we do an analysis that guides that process, particularly the technology of how they calculate new traffic being introduced to the system, how it's distributed in the system, and how that's analyzed to determine whether there is adequate capacity or is there any issues. I'm more than happy to kind of talk you through how that works and how that's done, if you'd like, just to kind of get context.
I will arrange that separately for it. That would be great. Thank you.
If you would like, you can schedule time with me and I'll go through it with you.
That would be fantastic.
Yep.
Thank you. I think it would help me to just look at, going through, like I said, 2 pages comparing, because I would just like to compare the numbers from 2008 to 2020 and 28.
Sure.
So I can understand what is going on in there. So great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that. And thank you, engineer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for my part. In fact, I'm much more of a narrative. Like if I can tell a story that's relatable to people who ask questions, I think it's far more important for me to do that well than to give them, because I wouldn't do it well, to give them some of these numbers. And so I read through those and I was like, oh, the narrative that you gave was much more helpful to me. So thank you. And I did not mean to go down a rabbit hole at 9 o'clock at night. Sorry.
It's quite all right.
Well, I apologize for bringing people down the rabbit hole, but
All right.
it is a credibility of understanding that if I have responsibility, I feel like it's my responsibility to understand what I'm supporting. So
Yep. So I'm willing to help you. You're welcome to contact me.
I
We'll
know.
schedule time.
You've always been very, very good about that, and I appreciate that. Thank you
Yep.
very much.
Right. Do any other commissioners have comments or questions on this item? Seeing nodding of heads. So, thank you. I'll say that this issue of the DPW's role with the DRB process, I think is generally of interest, especially earlier in the evening and planned ahead. That maybe we can come back to that in our time at sort of high level, like day sort of one sort of day in the life of various hats that are worn by DPW staffers, and also sort of the life cycle of different types of tasks that the staff is asked to play a role in. Interesting conversations for another time. All right, thank you all for the points there. Mr. Golding, do we have anyone interested in public comment on this item?
Hi, Chair Hogan. At this time, nobody is signed up for public comment.
Thank you for checking that. All right. With that, thank you again to staff. I will close out this item. I appreciate the info as always. Moving forward, looking at agenda item 10, approval of draft minutes from November 18th meeting. All right, is there any sort of comments or concerns about the minutes, or are we ready to entertain a motion?
One quick comment. I saw in the minutes, there was an identification of you, Chair Hogan, as the chair, and I didn't know if the protocol was to also identify the vice chair, because I did not see that identified in there for Commissioner O'Neill. Super small detail. If it's not protocol, fine, but I figured I'd ask.
Thanks, yeah, I think we've seen it in the past.
We're happy to add it in. Sometimes we show all the titles, sometimes I think we don't, but I think for consistency's sake, listing all the titles is fine, and we'd welcome any motion to approve the minutes with that change.
So moved.
I'll second.
And seconded by Commissioner Roundabout. Thank you. All right, any discussion around that motion? Bring it to a vote then, please. Seeking a vote to approve the November minutes with the one addition to specify Vice Chair O'Neill Rocco in attendance. Can we get a vote? Commissioner Overby.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Aye. Thanks, Tiki.
Commissioner Gilman.
Aye.
Commissioner Bose.
Aye.
Commissioner Barr.
Aye.
Commissioner Archambault.
Aye.
Aye for myself. The minutes pass unanimously. All right, move forward. Director's report.
All right. Let's see here. There were a couple items in the director's report that I'd love to just quickly touch on. We are still active in our construction season. I can't believe it, but 33 North Avenue, we're continuing to do a stormwater pipe repair and a slope repair right on the backside of Depot Street. That work is going well and should wrap up in the next week or so. I had mentioned the waterfront rail and bike path coordination. I think it may be fertile ground to brief the commission in January or February on the project. We are working very hard with Parks and VTrans and Vermont Rail to undertake a pretty significant realignment of infrastructure through the waterfront in order to achieve the city's goals of putting the bike path on the west side of the tracks continuously through the waterfront, while also bringing passenger rail to Burlington. It has not been an easy effort, and I want to thank Norm and Team Parks for a lot of hard work, and happy to bring some more information and detail on that in the future. We've wrapped up our construction of this season, but we have another big year next year that will have impacts on the waterfront. And I think for the community's benefit, it would be good to provide a briefing. We're in the midst of procuring an enterprise asset management system. I'm really excited. This is kind of an inside wonky effort on our part, but we have millions of dollars of assets, and our ability to efficiently steward them, thanks to your effort through the Sustainable Infrastructure Plan, Burlington has reinvested in our assets more than we have in decades. That said, if we don't maintain them well, we will not get the full lifespan out of those assets. So the enterprise asset management software is a tool that would spread across departments in the city and enable us to track work history, public work order requests, and a whole host of data that will enable us to make the wisest decisions on these investments. So we're hoping that in the next 2 or 3 months, we'll have a system selected and we'll be going to City Council for approval. And then lastly, I'll just say that the last paragraph talks about the fact that we're about at the 5-year mark for the Sustainable Infrastructure Plan. Hard to believe that in November 2016, the voters approved 2 bonds to kick off a renewed reinvestment in our infrastructure. Those bonds were really meant to last through the 5-year window. So now we need to figure out what we're doing next. And unfortunately, with COVID and the economic challenges, this will be even a more difficult conversation than last time, but look forward to engaging the commission in the coming months on that conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Director Spencer. Moving forward to Commissioner Communications. Start with Commissioner Barr.
I don't necessarily have any huge ones. I know that we've had some very cold weather, and some of the bike lanes have gotten attention and some have not. So I know looking in the future that if cyclists, especially up Colchester Avenue on that corridor entrance into Burlington, if we can put some attention to that, but otherwise I think that things have been pretty darn good considering. So thanks. I also wanted to add too, and this is part of the Old East End neighborhood group that we have down here in the forgotten part of Burlington. We're going to be putting together something, and we're working with Parks to put together something at Szymanska Park. So I'll probably do more of a commissioner comments in January once we get something a little more firm. But with COVID, we're really trying to do something to get some people outside and in an area where we can maybe even schedule some outdoor activities, which could include snowshoeing or snow sculptures or sugar on snow, which I think should get everybody's on this call's attention because that's the best stuff ever. So I'll keep you informed. But it's an Old East End. We're going to call it. I think we determined, we've got a meeting on Friday. I think it's going to be called Winterlude, which is stealing from Ottawa. They do a Winterlude up there, very similar to the Winter Carnival in Quebec. So stay tuned.
Got it. Thank you. Commissioner O'Neill.
Spelling is very important for that event, Commissioner Barr. L-E-W-D, it better not be.
I don't have any comments except for to say thanks. It's been a phenomenal year in so many ways, and just really proud of some of the ability of the Public Works staff to continue plugging on, and my vision of Busy Town for those of you who have kids or had kids, and that book, and realizing that on the commission, I get to open pages of the books to see everything that's being done. And I think it's just a testament to kind of our successes in being able to kind of maintain our infrastructure when, for some of us at the beginning, things just felt so out of control. So thank you, and no other comments.
Commissioner Archambault.
Just a quick note, Chapin, I've brought this up before. There's a facility down at the, if you're on the 127 bike path, right? You enter from, I think that's Manhattan Drive, it's kind of that little, not so much traffic on that road, the entryway to that bike path, go all the way down the hill. There's a facility there because back there in the Intervale used to be the old dump. And I believe at one time it was off gassing and burning methane. It's not doing that anymore. It has not for some time. But I bring this up because that facility has been broken into. There's a container next to it, and there's flammable supplies strewn about. Someone's broken into that. Got to secure that site, man. There's some equipment in there that I think is worth money, and we're gonna shore that up, please.
Thank you. Speaking of the broad array of assets the city stewards. Yeah.
It's true. I know. Even though I happen to run by it all the time, so that's I
Yes.
happen to see it.
We will follow up, and yes, I will work with Team Water Resources, who's responsible for maintaining the landfill-related infrastructure, and we'll get you an update on what our plan is.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilman.
Nothing for me today.
All right. Commissioner Overby.
I don't have any commissioner comments, but I just wondered, do we need to circle back because I pulled that consent agenda item out and actually have something of accepting the communication? And did we have to do anything to that as another accepting the communication like we would have done in the original consent agenda? Procedurally, do we have to do anything?
No, I don't believe so. It was, since it was pulled and put on the deliberative agenda and was discussed and will be included in the minutes, I don't think any formal action needs to be taken.
Great. I wasn't sure. All right, thank you. I have no other comments.
All right, I think that's how if Commissioner Bose step out. I will say, sort of echo some of the sentiment here that in a trying year on a number of levels, very much appreciate Team DPW's effort to keep everything plugging along amidst undoubtedly personal as well as professional challenges along the way. We as a city are better for it. A comment, speaking of, I mean, certainly the department's ability to make such great progress on anything is only as strong as and healthy is the staff that are working on the team. And something that I've mentioned in the past, I think is worth a closer look at, sort of polling staff's morale and satisfaction, polling staff for suggestion and so forth. It's something that I value in my day job when I get the chance to be surveyed and have it, I was just doing it in a way that information can be collected and anonymized, or sort of brought up to sort of group levels and sort of just get the pulse on things and maybe spot early concerns, or just generally just the fact that people are being asked may go a long ways towards improving said morale as well. So I don't know if there's anything in the way of employee survey currently, but if not, I would love to revisit that and talk about how maybe we can do that in the future. And I would expect maybe that us as a commission would be interested in that, sort of in the bigger pictures. We're looking at, we have goals each year on staff sort of development and everything, and staff health, avoiding lost time injury. We track this sort of stuff. It's also sort of track general job satisfaction. Are people feeling like this is is it a great place to work, for example?
Yes, great. We do have employee surveys periodically. We had one, I want to say about 6 weeks ago, especially targeted to the pandemic. Some folks, as you know, are coming in and working every day in the field, and others are in a remote location working from home during the pandemic. So we have a very diverse workforce being asked to do work differently in many different respects. So we have done a survey internally. We are working on some of the areas that came out of that survey to best support our employees. And I would say one recent material effort was the hazard pay effort that we were able to bring forth to the City Council three weeks ago or so for our frontline staff. And I really want to appreciate the union for working quickly with us to identify the individuals who fit the policy and would be eligible for the hazard pay. And it was distributed last week, I believe, in paychecks. And there's a lot more to be done, obviously, than just the hazard pay. We've been working with our safety officer to try to ensure proper ergonomics at home, working with staff in the fields to have safe protocols for how work gets done in the COVID era. Our work has been turned upside down, and I really do appreciate the compliments from commissioners at the end of the year. We had our last all-staff meeting Tuesday, where I got to pass along my appreciation, but I will certainly pass along yours as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that, Spencer. All right, with that, we'll close out Commissioner Communications and move on to item 13, adjournment and next meeting date, January 20th.
Motion to adjourn.
Ooh, quick withdraw. Commissioner Barr, we have a motion.
I second the motion. Go ahead, Gilman, you got it.
That's right.
We'll give the second to Commissioner Gilman. Any
It's a season of tradition, so.
question on the motion? All right, two of votes, please. All in favor, the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
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 Aye for myself. Any opposed? All right, thank you. We are adjourned at 9:24. We will see you all.
Have a great holiday, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.